So you want in on the secret tool I use to create villains with more of a unique flair. What if I told you it could also help you create more interesting characters, or cooler magic items, maybe even epic quests? What if I told you this one simple, measly tool was not so fast? I'm not giving away all of my secrets that easily, but I guess I will in about 30 seconds. Because that's the whole point of this video. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about one deceivingly simple tool that I love using to make my campaigns more unique, not only when it comes to creating terrifying villain concepts, but also for helping players to create more complex characters, thinking up super cool magic items, and even for coming up with interesting quests, monsters, allies, and more. Then I'm going to give you not one, not two, but 3 villains to use in your games that I designed using this tool. And of course, there's a free PDF below with stat blocks and some homemade watercolor portraits, just because. But I'm a beginner watercolorist. So let's keep those expectations low. Before we begin, I had the joy of sitting down with Ryan at Verdigree Table to chat about all things TTRPG, but also to roll up a character using the tables in his book, The Game Master's Compendium of Explosive Creation. It is chock full of great ideas for rolling up unique, dynamic characters, items, factions, maybe even. Fine, you've got me. I guess my 30 seconds are up. My one simple tool for creating dynamic villains, among many other things, is roll tables. Hey, no, I mean it. Sheesh, give me a chance, will ya? The magic of roll tables can be easy to dismiss. After all, as DMs, it often feels like we have no shortage of ideas bouncing off the walls of our brains. But here are a few of the many reasons I can't live without them. Creating stuff off of random roll tables is to DMing, as creative writing exercises is to novelists. A good roll table can really help give those imagination muscles a good workout. One of the things I see whenever I see that people say they don't really like them is that they don't really try to build something cohesive with their prompts. They take their random rolls, sword, ice damage, giant slayer, and go, yes, this sort of icy giant slaying sure is random. Give it to their PC, and then blame the lackluster response on tables instead of doing what they're supposed to do, which is make it make sense. This is where the fun comes in. It's from weaving the ideas together from the prompt and then fitting it into your existing stories and world building in a way that feels organic. So if you have a very Monty Python-esque group that have managed to find their way into an Icewind Dale campaign, they might appreciate the Emperor's Oblivion, a sword they need to recover in order to defeat the monstrous penguin equivalents of Giantkin that exist outside one of the towns. Boom! New magic item, new monster, new potential side quest. All there, waiting for you to flesh them out. Having to try to puzzle things together this way almost always results in me wanting to build an entire campaign around some of the things I come up with, which happens to be exactly why I'm making this video. The villains I created with Ryan using his book got me so excited that I wanted to flesh out and share our creation with you guys. With roll tables, since you end up putting things together that you wouldn't expect, what you're trying to build comes out feeling fun and fresh and new. While this isn't solo play in the sense that you're running a campaign for yourself, which I do have some plans on doing in the future, it's not really that different either. Playing with roll tables in your world lets you experiment whenever you want. Maybe you go through Ryan's book and you roll up a knight. With all of your prompts, how do you think that character existed in this world that you're in? Are they still alive? Maybe they're now an aged adventurer your PCs might run into. Or have they passed, leaving a cool location for your PCs to explore, or a magic item for them to find. Not to mention that it lets you play with ideas for future campaigns. Maybe like me, you've realized that it's an unsustainable practice to try to run 3 campaigns while also playing in 4 other ones. Playing in world building with roll tables lets you explore as many campaigns and settings as you want without the pressure of, actually having to run them. And by the time you do run them, you'll have a plethora of extra goodies that will make your game seem even more immersive. Probably one of the most underrated benefits of using roll tables, though, is that you get to feel surprised by the creations you come up with, too. I feel like this isn't something that happens that often as a DM. We're the ones that are usually busy trying to curate toy boxes for our players, so most of the surprise happens as they play through it. But roll tables give you the chance to uncover the story just as much as the players, which can be a ton of fun. I think that a hidden benefit of doing a little bit of this before you start working with your players, whether you keep any of the ideas you come up with or not, is that it really prepares you to let go and be more receptive to the player's ideas. If you start with a little roll table creative exercise warm-up, you already have all of those cogs turning, going, how does all of this fit together? So when your player asks if they can pretty please play a weird homebrew frog person, you'll be a lot more likely to actually think through how you could help them make this work, instead of being boring and just saying no because this isn't what you imagined. So if you're a roll table skeptic, give them a chance. The important thing to remember is that they're best used as a starting point. I really like to play it by the book and create something with the initial prompts that I get. But then I always go back in and tweak and refine the ideas I have and cut out the things I'm not interested in. Just because you roll it doesn't mean you have to stick with it. Remember that you can jump around between ideas and chapters. You can roll an option, decide you hate it, and then just pick one that calls to you. And you can even use multiple books. For the villains in this video, I created them with Ryan using his book exclusively. And it's a really fucking awesome book, honestly. But nobody is gonna stop you if you wanna mash in concepts from another book like Worlds Without Number, which has some tables I really like for campaign building. It even has a free version. So don't be afraid to be flexible in how you use them. So can something as banal as random roll tables truly help us DMs create epic villains? Well, when I sat down with Ryan to roll some dice, we actually weren't even trying to create villains. We were literally together to roll up a character from the weirdo archetype table in his book. In fact, we ended up with one character, 3 villains, 2 sets of potential allies, monsters, magic items, and more. And this was probably all done in less than an hour. This is what I mean when I say roll tables are incredibly cool and incredibly useful tools. You might start in one place thinking you're exploring one idea, and then end up somewhere completely different. So make sure to check out the video on his channel, because there's a ton of really cool ideas that came out of that session. But today we're in our villain era. So some background. These villains are all very Fey Arthurian themed, and they're interconnected. There's something I really love about villain sets of 3, but I always look at stories as modular. So feel free to just take your favorite one and run with it. And we're gonna go from low-level minion to big boss, starting with our first villain is the Sculptor. But your PCs can call her Florentia Maluli. What's so scary about an artist, you may be asking yourself? And if you are in fact asking that, you've obviously never had a run-in with the fair folk. Good for you. So Florentia the Sculptor is going to be a minion of our big bad. And if you want to give your PCs more info about her at the beginning, that way they can incorporate her or her deeds into their backstories, she's probably the best one of these villains to offer that kind of direct connection to. And while Florentia might seem like a not-so-humble artist, carving the likeness of great heroes into a variety of stones in her small but elegant workshop, her carvings are a little bit more sinister than they seem. And if any of your PCs ask Florentia to carve a statue of them, as time goes on they'll start hearing voices in their heads. Whispers at first, but slowly they'll grow in power. And as Florentia finishes her work, your PC's consciousness will now be trapped in the statue that they asked her to make of them indefinitely, now replaced by another who's operating their body. This is the fate that has befell all of the other statues that Florentia has carved of the other heroes that came before them. And so the obvious story hook here is seeing if you can get one or all of your PCs to inquire about their own statue. I think if they see her work about town, or if her fountain of a hero tableau in front of her workshop impresses them, there's a good chance they might ask even if they aren't the self-aggrandizing type. Bard, if they're not a bard. And you'll want to make sure that this ends with some Fey deal wordplay. Something along the lines of having her ask them if they would like her to capture their likeness. Progress clock starts now! I hope they have fun finding their way out of this. But this definitely isn't the only way to incorporate the Sculptor as a villain. If any of your players are interested in changeling or alien abduction types of stories, they might be interested in helping someone who thinks that their person isn't really that person, whether it be their baby, their partner, their sibling, etc. And this could be someone related to your PCs, or just someone related to an NPC your players might have taken a particular shine to. Another way to work her in would be to use her as a foreshadowing event for our big bad down the road. If your players come across several people over time that seem to be losing their minds with the same sets of symptoms, they're gonna get suspicious. Which of the other villains might they run into as they begin to investigate? But if your PCs get to the point where they want to engage Florentia in battle, you better bet she's gonna run. She's a grunt. She doesn't really have skin in this game outside of saving her own. Most of the spells in her stat block are meant to assist with that. She's much more likely to incapacitate your PCs rather than outright kill them. And if you want to add in a few extra roadblocks for your players, you can add a few extra carved animal statues using her familiar stat block. That way they can occupy a little bit more of your PC's time while Florentia makes her escape. And depending on what type of people your PCs are, I think there are even ways that Florentia could turn into a possible ally. At least if she thinks there's something in it for her. Like I said, there's even more details and ideas related to Florentia in the free PDF in the description, so don't forget to check it out. But you know who isn't gonna run? The Perennial Sentinel. He's probably my favorite thing we came up with, even though Florentia's really cool. But this guy here is the big bad's enforcer. So when we rolled him up, his prompt was under rivals and enemies, and he was listed as Sir Liontooth, inept and delusional knight with dandelions growing from the seams of his armor. Dandelions. Get it? Perennial? It's a plant joke, guys. And I like to think that's how he started, but that's definitely not the point we're at anymore. No, we are not. So this once delusional dandelion knight is the person who will be guarding things for our big bad and carrying out their will, because he no longer has a will of his own. And I can't decide if he's undead or a fey construct, so you can pick and tinker with things as you see fit. But I have this very graphic scene in my brain that I think would be really cool and cinematic for your PCs. So I imagine the party traveling through the woods, coming up to this clearing, and in the middle of this clearing stands this kind of colorful and whimsical knight. And I like to imagine kind of a dandelion and marigold color scheme going on here. As they get to the edge of the forest, they can immediately tell that something is wrong. And maybe if somebody has really high passive perception or makes a really great roll, you can give them a little bit ahead of time when they spot him from the woods. But as they enter the clearing, and they can see him standing with his cape billowing in the wind, it's almost like he's there waiting for them. And depending on what kind of stuff they've done so far, he might be. But he's out there in this field surrounded by lush greenery and flowers. And instead of the normal horsehair kind of mane ponytail that knights have on their helmets sometimes, he has this kind of billowing dandelion puff that's going to seed in the wind behind him. All very wondrous and whimsical. But that's when the players start to notice the thing. And the thing is, as they look out into this field and see this area that this knight has already traversed, everything is just brown and dead and rotting. He has an area of effect where he's basically just absorbing the life force of kind of the nature around him to help grant him power. And just like that, the whimsy goes to alarm, especially as something in him seems to finally register your presence. And he begins his slow, steady, methodical march to where your group stands. And I don't know about you, but as a player, I'd probably fucking run from that. Although I didn't run out of that one place in Curse of Strahd, where a lot of PCs that actually make it to Barovia die. Weirdly enough, though, there's also more about him in the PDF. Strange. Like I said, though, the Perennial Sentinel, he isn't gonna run. I don't even think somebody's really home in there anymore, honestly. He's just a terrifyingly mindless minion for the big bad. You know, sometimes chit-chat is overrated, especially if you channel your inner Jason Voorhees while you're out running this guy. Last but not least, we have our big bad. And it should come as no surprise that behind every great string of villains is a hag and her coven. At least, you know, if I'm the one running the game. And our hag is Necrosa Ratsister, a green hag who's part of a larger coven focused on creating monstrous chimeras and abominations in pursuit of procuring superpowers. I think Necrosa is focused on the power of omniscience, which is why she was working with Florentia the sculptor. While Florentia was out there locking people's consciousness into statues, the hag was now the consciousness, inhabiting these bodies that were no longer theirs. I think of it as similar to an Elder Brain kind of vibe, just with a lot more Fae-oriented flavor. So with Necrosa and Florentia, I think a fun thing to flesh out for your game would be really thinking through their involvement. What does Florentia owe that would put her in this position? Did the hag give her these powers, or did she corrupt what she already had? And this is also where the Perennial Sentinel comes in. Since he is one of the hag's creations, he's carrying out her dirty work. That way the hag can be more removed from the day-to-day operations. So I personally feel like your party wouldn't come across Necrosa until they disposed of him. But if they're interested in wheeling and dealing with her, I don't know too many hags that can resist a good bargain. And some great resources for fleshing out your hag and tying her in with the rest of the party is one of the old MCDM Arcadia issues. Pretty sure it's issue 8, but it has some hag subclasses that really help get you thinking concretely about hag and player connections. But Necrosa is a very traditional green hag. She very much has that kind of twisted druid thing going on, and I think flavor-wise she'll probably just expound upon some of that nature corruption flavor that I gave to the Perennial Sentinel. And I actually think that she's potentially the weakest member of this coven. So if you want to continue to kind of try to stretch this concept and explore other wrongs and evils that this coven is committing, all in the pursuit of gaining special powers, I'd probably have her be the first big boss of that campaign. But then you can go and finish out second and third boss battle arcs with the other hags trying to harness other powers, if that were something you're into. So if you want to see the character that these villains were built around, the allies we created in this fight against the hag, one involves time travel, and even another really scary monster called the Cave Angler. Make sure to go check out the build video with Ryan at Vertigree Tables YouTube. And if you think you might be a roll table convert after hearing about a tiny fraction of the cool shit we created, his book, The Game Master's Compendium of Explosive Creation, is honestly amazing. If you liked this video, make sure to check out the next one, and keep an eye out on my shorts this week. I think I'm gonna roll up some random quick characters using his book, just kind of like rapid fire creation ideas. But then I want you guys to tell me what you would have built with what I rolled. I really like listening to everybody's cool ideas. So keep an eye out.